There we go. Transit network accessibility. Okay, so one of the great things about T-Best is that not only can it do regular just market analysis for any kind of area, so we've looked at multiple area types and summarized many different um, markets relative to stops and routes and mobility areas, et cetera. But you can also perform network accessible market analysis. So basically, T-Best calculates travel time to and from any location within the transit network and summarizes by socioeconomic and land use or stop ridership. So looking out through the transit network and summarizing information and markets that are accessible within a certain amount of in-vehicle plus composite travel time. So our market analysis tool allows you to dynamically adjust the network parameters to define accessibility to and from a single stop or multiple stops. Network accessibility can also allows analysis to and from a mobility area definition, such as corridors or activity centers or a central business district or any input geography. And we define travel time as network travel time, which the components of that are in-vehicle time, transfer walk time, transfer wait time, and more, right? And we define those using what's called a network accessibility build. So we had mentioned this before, and this is basically a stop-to-stop OD matrix or origin destination matrix from every stop to every other stop in the network. So how you set that up is via a network build, and you can see some of the components of the impedance. The maximum composite travel time is here. You can set the number of transfers that T-Best will take as it's networking. So what you're doing is setting the networking parameters here to calculate that OD matrix. So the maximum walk distance is also here. So when you're walking away from the stop to a destination, transfer options are available. The default is transfer anywhere, but you can limit transferability if you want to. Walking speed, a time transfer wait time. So if you have time transfers in the network, it's set at a certain time, or you can edit this. And there are fare penalties. So if you want to include fare as a component of impedance, you can certainly do that, as well as a transfer penalty as well. So there's penalties involved with this, and weighting factors if you want them to be. If it's set to 1 here, there really is no weight factor. So you would set this to 2 or 5 as kind of a factor, a weight factor or a penalty, to make this more of a penalized a component of impedance. So I'm not sure if everyone knows what impedance is, but it's basically the composite measure of overall travel time. And if you're doing kind of accessibility calculations, you may want to penalize certain things more than others. And that the weighting factor allows you to do that, as well as enforcing like a fare penalty as well, because it may deter you from even getting on at a particular location if the fare is too high, or et cetera, right? So there is different components of impedance that are way out in this network build that we use for network accessibility. So after you've set up your network build, you've run it, you've created your OD matrix, then you can work through the network accessibility wizard. So essentially, it's very similar to the market analysis wizard, where you're selecting as whenever you come in, either to summarize markets for parcel data or socioeconomic data. You would also select the network build, and generally this is, whenever we do this by default, we call it 100-minute build because it's 100 minutes of composite or total impedance, the maximum impedance or travel time. So we call it 100 minutes, and it's generally for the AM peak, but you can build a network OD matrix for any of the T-best time periods. The walk market capture distance, because it does take into account not only the in-vehicle time, but the walk time to the destination. So if you're walking to a parcel, it's going to, take the general distance, maybe not the path distance, but the straight line distance from the stop that you're on to the target parcel. And if it's within the overall impedance to walk to that parcel, then it will count that parcel. So it not only takes into account the overall kind of accessibility through the network, but also the walk to the destination. That destination could be a centroid of a block, a census block, as well. Okay, so a couple things here. We can also set up the origin or destination. So you can show the market summary with accessibility from or with accessibility to the currently selected stops or an existing mobility area. So basically it's outflow from a stop in terms of accessibility or what's coming in. You can show the accessibility in either case. We also have the option to accessibility spatial filter. So let's say that we're running an accessibility from the Central Station in Gatorville, the Rosa Parks Station, and we really don't want to see all of the destinations. We just want to confine it to the city of Gainesville, right? We just want to see our full market, but confine it to the city of Gainesville. So that's what this allows you to do, is to say, given a mobility or extent, and it could be the city of Gainesville, could be something else, I only want to see my totals as it relates to the city of Gainesville. Okay. So very similar setup to our regular market analysis, except we're going to have some different options available to us in the data profiles. All right, so our options that I just mentioned are, we're going to have a market variable travel time or a heat map. So you saw the heat map in the initial slide. You can also summarize by transfers. So however many transfers it takes to get to a destination market, you can summarize by that. And you also have market and land use profiles and categories that you can, so this is our original socioeconomic and land use profiles that we could use. All of those are available in this as well. So it's not just limited to the heat map and the transfer map. We can also go back to our overall profiles for market analysis. You can also use the summarize relative to the Title VI, the system average or Title VI. You have accessibility filters. So that's what this is, where if you wanted to limit after you've already created your heat map, you can say, well, I only want to see the market for one transfer, and limit it to 45 minutes of travel time. So you could apply that and it would filter out the map. And of course, we have our feature toggle displays, the same as our regular market analysis tools. The one difference here is the show cumulative travel time market. So by default, it's going to show cumulative markets as you progress in travel time away from the origin or into the origin. Or into the destination. But you can also just show it by market size. So rather than individual or accumulating markets, individual markets at each travel time increment. All right, so here is just an example where we have total population is selected. We have an origin stop, which is this go. If you can see this in the center, this is where we're starting from. And so we selected this as an input, and we have total population here. We have limited the accessibility to 45 minutes of max. So basically, we're showing the 45-minute market from this location, where you can get to in 45 minutes of travel time. So in the travel time summary here, it's showing you in increments of travel time, 0 to 1 minutes, 2 to 7, 8 to 11, all the way up to 45. Here is the total population, the cumulative population total at each interval. So in total, you can get to 70,000 people. And if you're comparing that with the service area, that's 24.59% of the service area is accessible within 45 minutes from the Rosa Parks station. Okay, likewise, we have a transfers summary. So we have 0 transfers, 1 transfer, and 2 transfers here. And the market for 0 transfers is in this light green. It's 11,513. So you can see the light green shading over in this area. The dark green is 1 transfer, which is over in this kind of general area. And then everything else is 2 transfers to get to that market. So what's interesting about this too is that we also have this trip length chart type. So on the y-axis, we have total population. And on the x-axis, we have trip travel time. So going out to 45 minutes again. So here's our 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. And it's showing us our markets by the color code is 0 is the light green and, olive green for 1 transfer and light blue for 2. So we can see how they're stacking up in each trip travel time increment, right? So it's kind of a unique look on how the destination accessibility is looking and also relative to the number of transfers that it takes to get there. Okay, so for that same market, instead of showing the heat map and transfers, now we're just showing minority population, and we've enabled the service summary to the system average, so we're showing above and below the system average. So yeah, so it's just another way that we can use that same market that we created, a destination market, a network accessible market, to show Title VI. Another kind of cool element of this is it doesn't have to be just one stop or location that you can run this from. So you can see in our illustration here that we have a stop here that was an origin point, another origin point, and another origin point. And what you're seeing is the combined accessible markets for all 3 of them. So so there's a few things with this that are very interesting, and you could run some interesting kind of scenarios here, and I'll give you an example of those in just a minute. All right, so the parcel data is also accessible, run through this as well. Same setup where we have, the heat map, we have the trip, I'm sorry, the transfer map as well. And then we have all of our individual land use types and groupings, all of that as well, summarized by person trips and building square footage. All of that's available to us here as well. What we're seeing in this particular example is accessible residential parcels from downtown, summarized by person trips, and accessibility and travel time to each residential and individual parcel. So in total, the person trips within 74 minutes of travel time is 145,000 total person trips. And the service, that's 56% of the total person trips in the service area. And you can see the cumulative graph over here. And of course, export is available. Take this out to ArcGIS Online as well. All right, so here's an interesting example of a TDP where, and HART, what they use this tool to create heat maps from all of the major activity centers in the Tampa area. So you can see that the first one is the Tampa International Airport here. So it's telling us basically a 2-hour travel time window from the beginning to the end, where it would take through their transit network to get to destination. So you can see starting from the airport here, it would take about 2 hours to get out here and down here, over here through the transit network. Same with Brandon over here. Here's downtown Tampa. Here's MacDill Air Force Base and University of South Florida, West Shore Mall. So several different areas where they have major activity centers. They wanted to show how far you can get in the transit network using this tool. So it was a very good illustration, very good use of this tool to be able to show this to the public. All right, and of course, exporting out to ArcGIS Online is available. This is the online map. All right, so there is a comparative kind of thing here as well, so that you can do, and I mentioned this just a couple of slides ago, where you can do some unique question and answer type of accessibility planning with this. So just a question that might be posed is, what is the percent of the service area minority population accessible within 60 minutes of medical facilities? So with this tool, you could measure that kind of accessibility using the parcel data, right? So we know the medical facilities or hospitals, and then we can say, find all those stops that have a hospital by them, and then calculate the total minority population that's accessible from hospitals, right? Or there's a special generator that's a hospital. So you can just find all the hospitals that stops and calculate the percent of the service area minority population that's accessible within 60 minutes. You can also say, what is the transit travel market 30 minutes from the first stop of each route in the network? You can ask, what percentage of employees have 60-minute transit access to the downtown redevelopment area, right? So all of these are certainly questions you can pose to this tool, and it could answer for you. Okay, so let's run through an exercise here and just see if we have any questions on this. I think my question went away here. Go back to Q&A. Here we go. Can TBES export the OD matrix? It is already kind of exported. It's in a SQLite database. So it is just right there under the, actually, I'll just show it to you. Let's see here. Where are we? Okay. So if we go to our TBES 5 directory, transit systems, our Gator bill, we go to scenarios folder. We have our fall 2024. We have 100-minute build. So this is the network accessibility DB. So this is a SQLite database. It really just has one table in it that is the OD matrix for that build. So if you wanted to investigate that, you can use SQLite Studio, I think it's called. It's a free tool. You download it, you can open up and do whatever you want to with your SQLite databases. So very accessible. You can use that as an OD matrix. Second follow-up question, and does the APC data have OD trips? Not exactly sure what that means. You can explain that a little bit more. Yeah, it basically will summarize them from stop to stop. So using the parcel data, land use data, market analysis, you can do that. So, and we'll actually kind of go through it. Maybe that'll answer some of your questions. We're going to do some of this in the exercise. So you just keep asking. If it doesn't answer it, then we'll talk about it a little bit more. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through this exercise. And yeah, so I'm on 7.5 Transit network accessibility, select stops for a network accessibility analysis. In TBES Explorer under the Gatorville Fall 2024 network scenario. So this is here, Fall 2024. There is this network accessibility builds, and we have this 100-minute build, and you can see that it has a caution on it. And in our exercise, it's saying that it needs to have a green check mark. So that means that it needs to be rebuilt, right? So, so what we do in this case to rebuild it is we just right-click on our network accessibility build and open the build. All right, so what this is giving us is the parameters that go into creating the OD matrix. So I mentioned this in the slides, the maximum composite travel time, transfers, walk distance, all that. And you can change these, right? So you're not locked into these numbers. You can modify these. These are fine to modify. If you only wanted a 60-minute total, you could do that. If you wanted to build this for all of the time periods, you could. Just note that these files can get very big. Matrix files can become very large, and that's why we really just do the AM peak, because we just don't want it getting too big. But certainly you can build for whatever you would want to build, as long as, you know, just have disk space for it. Okay, so all we want to do is rebuild this as it sits. So we'll just hit the rebuild network. So you all should do the same if you're following along. All right, so it completed. So we're all good. Notice we have our check mark that we needed by it. So we're all good to use this accessibility build. All right, so we're going to open the fall 2024 scenario. Just double click on it. And at the bottom of the stops panel, we're going to select view all stops. So we see all stops are visible. So it's going to tell you, let's see, in the stops panel, click on the stop name column header to sort the rows by stop name. So we can do that. So what that does is brings all of basically the Rosa Parks to the top. And we're going to just select the first one. So here we have our selection. All right. And what we want is to right click on this and zoom to selected. So we're just going to zoom in to this stop. So here it is. Here's our selected stop. Now, what we want to do is use the stop selection tool on the map. So we're going to switch from routes to stops. And we're going to click and hold and drag a box around this area. So what it's going to do is select all of the stops. So basically this is the transfer center, the main transfer center for the city, the RTS system, City of Gainesville. So basically almost all of the patterns and routes are coming into the station. And so what you'll see is that in our selected list, we have 36 stops, which means that there are 36 unique patterns that are accessing this particular stop. So we want to just show view selected stops only. So you can see that all of them are RTS downtown station, which is what we want. Okay, we want all of them selected, because what we want to do is show accessibility from all of them throughout the network. So to do that, we're going to right click, and on this list, just right click on it. And where it says network accessible markets, we're going to select accessible socioeconomic. And that will take us to our wizard. So we're just going to accept the defaults here. We're going to do socioeconomic data or 100-minute build, which we just built for the AM peak. Our walk market distance is 1/4 of a mile. Are we going to compare? Let's look. Yes, we are going to compare. So define service area by county and Alachua, and we're going to compare it. And we'll just accept the defaults here. And notice that we could, if we wanted to, limit the results to just the city of Gainesville. So that's how you would do that. But for right now, we won't do that. And just hit next and apply. Okay, so pretty quickly, we have a heat map that shows the total accessibility in terms of overall composite travel time throughout the network to all the destinations that it can get to from the downtown station. So you quickly see that kind of our max number here is 74, and probably at the stop level it's 71, which gives us right here. But generally in that range, right? So in our exercise part 3, it's asking us to review the downtown accessibility heat map and data summary. What percent of the total Gatorville service area population is accessible from the downtown station within 100 minutes of total travel time? That number is 63.84% is accessible. In the data profile selection panel, change the summary market variable to Title VI minority population. So let's switch this to Title VI minority population. What is the percent of the minority population that is accessible within 100 minutes of the downtown station? That number is 71.95%. So just so you know where I'm looking, it's right here. In the feature display options panel, click the transit network visible and market boundary visible options to show routes and define market areas. So let's click this on sorry, got to exit out of illustration. And so transit network visible. So let's turn that on. So what this is telling us, this is pretty interesting too, is that for every stop, it's actually labeling the stops with the impedance to get to that, the minimum impedance, right? So from our downtown station, on all the different routes that are coming in and out of that, it's basically the shortest path in terms of impedance to each one of the stops. So it's essentially the travel time, the composite travel time to all the stops. We want to turn on the market boundaries so we can also see that. All right. Okay. In the data profile selection, this is item 4, panel, change the summary option to market variable transfer summary. So let's switch this to market variable transfer summary. All right, so that looks different. Let's turn off our transit network and our market boundary. So now we see this a little differently. And it's asking, what is the percentage of the total population what percentage of the total population does not have to transfer when traveling from the downtown station to the in the network? So that would be 42% of the is it the market area total? Okay, 42%, right, of the service area and 58% of the market area. So all this in green is 0 transfers, which makes sense because basically everything is radiating out from this location. And if we have most of those radial routes coming out of it, they would all be 0 transfers, right? So it just makes sense that it looks like this. All right, so item 5 in the accessibility filter options panel, change trip travel time to a maximum of 30 minutes. So let's go ahead and switch back to our travel time summary, which is our heat map. And it's asking us to switch this to 30 minutes and hit apply. All right, so our heat map now changes, it collapses, and now we're looking at, instead of the 100-minute total, now we're down to 30 minutes of where you can get to from the downtown station. Yep, so we have the same kind of export options. If we want to create a report out of this, we can. So it looks something like this. All right. Okay, so we want to close this now. Any questions on that? Notice it says network accessible market analysis for the AM peak here, travel time here. We could show this non-cumulative. So instead of showing this as a cumulative chart, this becomes non-cumulative. I guess we didn't show, I'll switch back real quick to the transfer summary. It automatically shows this trip travel time or trip length chart. And one of the cool things about this is you can click on it and it will show, kind of flash those, in this case, census blocks that are at that location. So you can kind of get an idea of where each one of these is located. So as we're kind of rolling down through, it's getting closer and closer to the origin. And then all the way out at 30 minutes is, the periphery. Okay, we'll close that down. All right, so let's go on to the next, and we're going to do this with the parcel data. So we don't even have to close this. We just go back and we switch to parcel land use data and go to next and next and apply. Okay, great. All right, so by default, what we have is our heat map from our downtown station. So all the parcels that it can get to in the transit network with a walk access distance of 1/4 of a mile. And so on item 2, so I'm on part 4 of the exercise, and I'm item 2. When market analysis processing completed, review the downtown accessibility heat map and data summary for the default person trip summary variable. So what I can see here is that many of the person trips are basically covered here, right? So a lot of the dense areas and all the person trips that are being generated in the total county of Alachua County, 91% of them are within this, right? So we have a total of 4 million person trips. So that's, that's a lot of person trips for, in this case, AM peak, right? We can switch these variables instead of showing, just total, all land use types, we can switch to just commercial. So here that filters the map to just destination commercial parcels that are accessible, which is also pretty cool. Same with residential. So if we want to show government, here's our government parcels that are accessible, and residential. So here's residential. If we just want multifamily, here's our multifamilies. And again, given the person trip market, we can also, instead of person trips, we could do population. So here's the population that's accessible from this location for residential multifamily units less than 10 units. And so that's the total population that's accessible to those parcels and the travel time to get there. Okay, so let's just switch back to all parcels. Sorry, all land use types. All right. So we did that. So let's switch this to the variable transfers. So again, this is showing transfers and this is population that it's showing the totals for. But we can also switch this to person trips and or building square footage. All of those are easily summarizable. So let's again go to the heat map and let's filter this down to 30 minutes. All right, so here is our 30-minute. So what I want to show you with this too is this, show the transit network here. And this is kind of interesting because it's illustrative of what I was talking about, where it's going out to these, like this is a 29 minutes, so we were filtering to 30. This particular stop got to 29 minutes, which means that all of these parcels surrounding it are within 1 minute of walk time, right? Given a 3 mile per hour walk time. And this one is at 28. So all of these parcels are at 2 minutes, right? So what I was saying earlier about, it incorporates not just the transit travel time, but also the walk time to the destinations. That's what is illustrative of that. Okay. All right, so that is all for this illustration. Of course, lots you can do with this. The export of this, and one thing I can do is I'll turn this off, and I'll just click on the map. And basically, when I do that, I can get the for any one parcel that I click on, I have the land use, it's single family, the network travel time to get to that parcel, and the number of transfers to get there. So whenever you export this data, it includes all of this information, right? So it's going to tell you the network travel time to get to that location and then allow you to work with it. Okay, so I'm going to shut this down and we're going to move on to the query tool. Close this. Just going to close this as well.